Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Williams, and I want to welcome you to MAC1105C. If you are watching this video, you should be enrolled in that course, Section 6, and this is for the summer 2023 semester. And not to be confused with all the different types of summer semesters, we are in the main summer semester, so that's the one that's going to last pretty much the entire summer. So what I'm going to do for you today, this is going to mimic what we would do if we were in an in-person class on your first day and I was going through the syllabus, what's on Canvas, the expectations, and basically everything there is to know about the course. To that end, of course, this won't answer every question you possibly have. So if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to answer them for you. With that said, I'll go ahead and get started. So when you log on to Canvas and you come on our Canvas site, this is what you should see. So I'm in my test student environment, which basically means it should show me exactly what it will show you. And I'm going to start and spend most of the time on the home page. Now, the home page is where you'll pretty much do all your work. All the links to all the assignments, everything like that is on this page. The other links you see over here, we have one for the syllabus, one to look at your grades, one to access the discussion boards, but you can also do that from the home tab. We have a couple tutoring links. I'll talk about these more specifically later. Honor Lock, if you're not familiar with that, that's how you're going to take your test. You don't actually have to use this link. Once again, it will be on this home page. And then the last one is an attendance page. I just have to have this activated for myself. You can look at your own attendance, but you'll see as we go through the syllabus, attendance is required to be taken once a week by the college. So that's what will be going in here. So to that, I just want to briefly talk about what is on this page, and then I'll jump into the syllabus. I won't go into specifics yet because a lot of this won't make sense until after the syllabus. But just to kind of walk you through what is on this page. So at the very top, we have two course informations, probably just throw that into one. We have student office hours, and all this is going to be, it's going to be a link that says this is my email address. We're in an online class, so office hours are basically via email. And these are the times that I will be able to be accessed via email to respond immediately. Once again, go through the specifics when I go through the syllabus, but just know that this is here. There's some other course information, which we'll talk about more specifically in a little bit. And then basically after that, we have all the assignments the way the course is set up. So when you have to take a quiz, once you're on the home page, you just scroll down and you will click on the appropriate quiz. Same thing for practice tests, same thing for tests. And then after those will be your standard assignments. So we have our assignments that look like this. They have a due date and then corresponding notes for that section. There's sometimes videos. And this is going to be the rest of the page. I'll talk more specifically about the setup of all this stuff, but that's what's all in here. All right, so to that, I want to go ahead and jump into the syllabus, talk about all that good stuff, and then we'll go back to the home page and talk about how you actually access all the information that's on there. All right, so once again, this is MAC1105C, College Algebra with Co-Requisites, and this is Section 6. Very briefly talked about my office hours, Mondays and Tuesdays, online class. So are basically the way we quote-unquote meet in office hours is you ask questions. Course description. Actually, before I go on, I want to reiterate one thing that I have written on the other page, and that's I don't only answer emails 2 hours out of the week. This is a time where if you do email me, I will respond rather quickly. If you email me at another time, let's say on a Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, I will be guaranteed to respond to you within 24 hours. But just beware that if you need an immediate answer, you should be asking questions during these times. So course description, you can read through this. Specifically, if you're familiar with math, some of this might make sense to you. If you're not, this is what we're going to be learning. So characteristics of functions in general, inverse functions, linear, basically a whole bunch of types of functions and solving equations related to them is what we're going to be learning, including some graphing. It's probably the synopsis here. The main important point I want to point out here, what I have highlighted right there. So this is college algebra with co-requisites. Basically, this is going to be a college algebra course, but we're going to have some additional resources from intermediate algebra. So whether you've taken that course, and if you've taken that TCC, it's MAT1033. There will just be some additional topics to help prepare you for the corresponding college algebra course topics. But at the end of the day, you're going to be taking the same tests. College algebra students take same quizzes, everything else. This is just going to be supplementary to help you out. Textbooks, really, when you don't have a textbook, you'll see when I go to the homepage, there's a link to a textbook, but you don't really need to use it. It is just one of the resources, more like, how the internet is a resource. You can look up how to do things. I have a lot of resources I've made intentionally for this course, and they're very direct. They're just like the questions you're expected to answer, and they support that. So it's really just a different perspective if you want to look at the textbook. Course outcomes. So basically, what are you going to get out of this course? You're going to be able to describe the relationship between the equation of a function and its graph with respect to domain, range, and other characteristics. Solve various types of equations or inequalities, including quadratic, absolute value, exponential, or logarithmic. Analyze the effect of transformations on the equation and graph of a function. Use a graphing calculator to analyze characteristics of a graph of a function. Solve applied problems using linear, quadratic, or other graphical models. And determine the inverse and composite functions and describe their characteristics. So if that sounds like some of that sounds like gibberish to you, that's exactly because that's what we're going to be learning. One thing I do want to point out is the key thing right here that may have sparked your attention. Use a graphing calculator to analyze characteristics. What this means is that we will have problems that having a graphing calculator will help. And if you already own one, like a TI-83, TI-84, something like that, you're free to use it in the course. But for the purposes of what we do in this course, there is a free online graphing calculator you can use, and you can even use it for your tests, quizzes, everything else. So if you don't already own one and you don't want to spend $100 on one, don't do that, just use the free one. And I have a link to it on the homepage, and I'll show you how it works, or at least direct you to where you can get some help, because I've made a video for that as well. To that end, you do need at least a scientific calculator, so a TI-30 would work well. There's a lot of different iterations of the TI-30, but they all cost between about $10 and $20. I highly recommend one of those, and then just using the free graphing calculator you'll have access to. If you don't already have a graphing calculator, it will save you time. Now, if you are going forward in a math-heavy major, you're going to be doing statistics, things like that. You're going to need a graphing calculator anyway, so you might as well buy one now. They don't ever get cheaper, so really just get one now if you can afford to. I'll skip over the general education learning outcomes. You can read those for yourselves. It's really more of a generic way of stating what we already went through. Same thing with program learning outcomes. Course expectations, like any course, whether it's math, English, anything like that, you're going to be asked to complete a variety of assignments throughout the course. In general math courses, we have lectures. You do homework based on those lectures to help you prepare for the quizzes, and then you do quizzes to help prepare for the exams. And ultimately, the exams help you prepare for the final exam. So that's really the structure of this course and the structure of most math courses. Almost all your grade comes from doing homeworks, quizzes, tests, and the final exam. There are practice tests, and there is a discussion board that is also required, but I'll go through those more specifically right now. So homework, the online homework assignments and everything's online for the purposes of this online course is worth 18% of your final grade. Now, all graded homework assignments for this course are done in Canvas and are due on Friday nights. I actually have a schedule later on in this document that will show you what's due when, so you can print that out if you want. It's also on the calendar on Canvas. But in general, Friday nights are when your homework is due. The structure for homework is you will get 3 tries at each problem. And then if you get it wrong all 3 times, you can get a new version. You can keep redoing this until you get the correct answer. So in theory, you spend enough time on any homework assignment, you can get 100%. It will, some take more time than others, but that's the idea. Quizzes are somewhat similar to homeworks in that you do get multiple attempts for a problem. For quizzes, you get 4 attempts per problem. Now, the difference is you don't get a new try. You don't get a new problem after those 4 attempts. So you will get 4 attempts for the same exact problem. After that, if you use all your 4 attempts, you still get it wrong. You can't redo it. So that's really the difference between a quiz and the homework. And quizzes are worth 9% of your grade. So overall, they are worth less, but there's about 7 or 8 quizzes in this course compared to about 25 to 30 homework assignments. So each one's worth a little bit more. The idea is that doing the homeworks for the weeks will help you prepare for the quizzes on those particular weeks. Now, one thing, if you are familiar with using Lumen, if you've done a math online course or probably just a math course at TCC before, you may be familiar with it, is you can use these things called late passes depending on what your instructor allows. For me, I allow you to use late passes on homeworks and quizzes, but that's it. And oops, didn't mean to skip, but late passes, you will, exactly as I said, you will be given the opportunity to use late passes on your homeworks and quizzes if you need to extend the deadline. You are given plenty at the start of the semester, but you will not receive extra if you use them all. So to make sure you really want to stay on top of your work, you don't want to have to use them, because if you are falling behind, especially in a summer semester where we have less time, it's hard to catch back up. Now, the reason why I allow you to do homework and quizzes is because sometimes things pop up. We're doing these things every week. We're doing homework and quizzes every week pretty much. And, if you get sick, if you're out for a couple of days for another reason, I don't want you to not be able to catch up in the course when something, of course, is not your fault. So instead of having to reach out to me, give you an extension, all that good stuff, I just give you those late passes. But you really want to limit it to when you need them, not just do them. So how do late passes work? Each late pass will extend your homework or quiz for 72 hours, which is 3 days from the posted due date. What does this mean? Well, really, it means that if you miss an assignment, for example, and it closed on January 19th, then the quicker you use a late pass, the more time you will have to work on that assignment. So using homework as an example here, the longer you wait to use it, the less time you have. For instance, if you wait until January 24th to access that homework assignment, so that's 5 days afterwards, you're going to actually have to use 2 late passes because you're going to have to extend it more than 3 days. and that would extend it, of course, 6 days. So then it would be due January 25th. Now you can keep using more and more late passes, even if you don't need to use that many. Obviously, you should only use the amount you need to be able to complete the homework assignment. But the reason why I bring up this example, let's say, just go ahead and use our time frame here. So our semester starts May 11th and it ends in July, towards the end of July. I believe July 27th is the last day. So if you have a homework assignment, let's say a homework assignment due May 19th, and you skip it for whatever reason, and by the end of the semester you want to use it, let's say, oh, I think I can do it now, July 21st. Well, you're gonna have to figure out how many late passes that's gonna take. The system will do it automatically for you, but you're talking over 2 months here, over 60 days. So it's probably going to take at least 20 late passes to be able to even open that assignment. So you don't want to put off doing old assignments until the end, because you're going to run out very quickly. The idea is to do assignments quickly after they are due in case you do need to use late passes. You don't want to have to spend a lot of late passes on old assignments because you're going to run out very quickly. Last thing, I guess last two things, you do not have to ask me if you can use your late passes, of course. There's no penalty for using them, and you don't get extra credit for not using all of them. They're just there for you in case you need them. But very important, you cannot use late passes on practice tests, or the final exam, only homeworks and quizzes, right? So these due dates for these assignments are due when they're actually due. If you have an excused absence or a reason for why you can't do these on time, then you need to actually have an excused reason, doctor's note, something like that, which you can send to me, and then we can work something out. But just beware, once those deadlines pass, you will not be able to use a late pass. Here's a little section to make sure you know how late passes are used. I'm not going to go through it now, but you should read it on your own, and just beware. Most people, the first time they use a late pass, they don't access it the correct way and they think something's wrong. So one thing I will just say now, and I'll probably say many more times going forward in this video, is access everything from the home page. Every assignment, if you access it from the home page, you won't get an error. If you try to access it otherwise, whether it's the calendar, the grades tab, something else, it's probably going to give you an error, especially if it's a past due assignment. All right, so we talked about homeworks, quizzes, and then late passes. Now, how does everything else work? Well, practice tests. So there will be a practice test for each test, including the final exam. And they are always due midnight the day before the exam is due. So everything is due midnight in terms of this course. And practice tests are just simply due the day before the test. These 4 practice tests will make up 3% of your final grade. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it can be. There's definitely been plenty of examples where students don't do any of the practice tests. Not only does that not help them with their test grade, because it's the best resource to actually prepare for the test, but then you end up missing the next letter grade by 1 or 2%. You should have just done those practice tests. In terms of the practice tests, they are very similar to the actual test, like to the point where, for example, practice test 1 will probably have about 25 to 30 questions. Test 1 will have 20 questions. It's basically going to be, test 1 is going to be 20 questions out of those 25 to 30 practice test questions. So you should really do that. It's a lot easier to prepare for a test doing the practice test than reviewing all the notes you have, going through all the quizzes, all the homeworks. Everyone has their own method for what they like to do. But my recommendation, if you keep up with the course, if you've taken notes, you've done all the homeworks, you've done all the quizzes leading up to a test, the practice test will be more than enough to prepare you. They are set up like a homework assignment. So exactly like I described homework assignments before, you go in them, you get 3 tries at a problem, you get it wrong, you can just get a new version and keep doing that until you get it right. To motivate a little bit, doing the practice tests in addition to being part of your grade, if you get at least a 90%. Now this is a hard cutoff, not a round, no rounding, a hard cutoff. But if you get at least a 90% on the practice test, I will give you a 3% bonus to your corresponding test score. So if you got a 90 on practice test 1, an 82 on test 1, then your final grade would be an 85, that 3% bonus. But because it is set up like a homework assignment, you can always do more if you need to get up to that 90. I do not do anything in terms of rounding. If you get an 89.9 on your practice test, you're not going to get that bonus. Right? You can just do an extra problem, get more partial credit on a problem, something like that. Unit tests, there will be 3 unit tests throughout the semester. Each test will be open the entire week it's due. Now that doesn't mean when you start that week that you've actually done all the homework and preparation for the test. So just be aware of that. They are always due on Sunday, and you will be given 90 minutes for each test. Of course, the piece here that's important, you must do it in one sitting. You will be proctored through HonorLock when you take the unit test and the final exam. So just be aware of that. And if you're not familiar with it, I have a video, and there's a practice assignment before the first test anyways to make sure you can get on that correctly. But once again, the important thing is, unlike every other assignment, you can, go back, leave it, come back, do it on your own time. Unit tests, you must sit down, just like if you were in class, and do it one sit down through. In terms of your grade, the 3 unit tests are collectively worth 45%, so each one's worth 15%. And like I said, they're due midnight on Sundays. We'll have a schedule a little bit lower. And this is really just what I mentioned before for tests. Yeah, I don't make up tests. If you miss one, the final exam can take the lowest grade. If you are excused, then of course we can work something out in terms of you making it up. But if you just straight up miss a test, you don't have a excused reason for that, you'll just need to prepare a little bit more on the final exam, because the final exam will take the place of a missing test score. So the final exam set up very similarly to the unit test, except you get more time. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes. Typically the final exam is 2 hours, but because it's online, I give you a 15-minute buffer there in case there's any issues in terms of technology. Usually there's not, but that's just a 15-minute buffer. And it's worth 20% of your grade. So like I said before, if you miss a test, so you have a 0 on a test, it will replace that, only 1. If you take all 3 tests and your final exam is higher than the lowest of those 3 test grades, it will replace the lowest as well. So, you're responsible, you don't miss an exam for an unexcused reason, and then you actually take the final exam, and it can benefit you not only to your final grade, but if you had a low test score anyway. Course outline. So those are the topics that we talked about before. I won't go through the details. The pacing schedule, this is what I was alluding to before. This is basically the schedule for the course. So you can print this out, you can take a screenshot of this, you can just remember it's here. But this is really going to tell you what's due when, as long as there's no disruptions in our semester, whether that be weather related or whatever else. This is exactly how we have the semester scheduled. So our course starts May 11th. For the purposes of scheduling and having the work week or test week rather start on Monday, I just have May 8th here, but really our first week starts May 11th. And then really how I have it structured is this is our Monday date, this is the Friday date, and on Friday our homework's due. So what homework sections are due? Saturday is when we have discussions due. I'll talk about those in a little bit. And then Sunday is when either quizzes or tests are due depending on the week. So you'll either have a quiz due, or if it is a test week, you don't have a quiz due, you'll have a test due instead. Okay. You will notice that in terms of the quizzes, I'll probably get this question, why do we not have a quiz 5 and 8? That's just because our semester is more compressed than a normal link semester. And, we have 7 quizzes. I'm just, in terms of naming convention, skipping quiz 5 and 8. No big deal. You're not missing anything. It's not going to hurt your grade, of course. So, for example, our first week, which is basically just Thursday and Friday, that, we're not in person, but that is really half a week. You basically have half a week of assignments due. Because we are in a co-requisites course, there are really 2 naming conventions for all of our sections. The ones without the A, so 1.1, 2.1, 2.2, etc. These are the college algebra sections. And then the ones that end in A, so 1A, 2A, and so on. Those are the co-requisite topics, which I have outlined here below. I'll talk in more detail what the difference is, but for the co-requisite topics, what they're really there for is to help you prepare for the corresponding section. So co-requisite topics from 1A will help you prepare for 1.1, 2A will help you prepare for 2.2, 2.1, and 2.2, and so on. All the co-requisite topics actually occur in test 1 material. After that, really anything you have learned or would have learned in intermediate algebra would just be helping prepare you for material. After that, there's no specific topics. So that's why all the co-requisite topics occur in test 1. Now, because of this, what happens is test 1 material can seem very fast-paced. This is supposed to be the material that's most familiar to you. There's a lot of overlap between prior math classes and the test 1 material. But with that said, that's really why I give you late passes. If you feel like you can't get everything done in the first week, it's literally the second day, and that's completely understandable. You can use the weekend, use a late pass, or even the beginning of next week. But what you'll notice is that pretty much every week for test 1, we have about 4 sections due. And then test 2 and 3, it's more around 3 sections due. So that's kind of what you have to think about going forward is, yes, test 1 is going to be very fast-paced. The whole course is going to be fast-paced because we do have 4 weeks less than a normal semester, but that's just the time frame we have to work with. Other information that is on here, so I have basically what I described is highlighted in red here. Important dates, so I have some school deadlines: the last day to add a class, drop class, and get a refund, and withdraw, no refund. And then our holidays: Memorial Day, Juneteenth, and Independence Day. So in terms of an online class, the only way this impacts us is we wouldn't have due dates on these days, but these are all, I believe they're all Mondays except for, yeah, I actually think they're all Mondays and Tuesdays. So it really doesn't impact us. You have 1 day gone out of 7 days. You're still going to do a lot of work in this time frame. So just beware of that. The only thing that I don't have written on here is that there's an honor lock practice test. So what I described before, this is going to be really the only assignment you do all semester that has no math in it. It's just an assignment to make sure you are prepared going into test 1 on how to actually get onto honor lock. Right, but if you have questions about this going forward, please let me know. Otherwise, just remember, really important, I think this is one of the most important pieces of the whole syllabus. Now, the whole most important piece to students typically is going to be this: how is your final grade going to be gotten? Well, we have discussions pretty much weekly, except for test weeks. Those are worth 5%, homeworks 18, and quizzes 9. Unit tests 45, so 15% each. Final exam 20, and practice test 3. So we talked about all those except the discussions already. That's how your final grade is going to be built up. And then standard grade scale, 90s are an A, 80s are a B, 70s are a C, and so on. I won't go through the reading this tips for student success. It would take me a while, but I highly recommend you read it on your own. It's one of those things that it's very important to understand how should I best prepare myself to succeed in this course. Especially in an online class and with math, I have lecture videos for every section that you can watch, and of course you can pause. You don't have to do the whole thing in one go, but really the important thing is, how do I structure that best? So that's really going to be what's in here. The one thing I do want to point out, because I've already talked about this being a summer semester, it's very fast paced. You wouldn't typically have in a normal semester about 1 to 1.5 hours of homework per lecture hour in class. Well, because this is homework, that's still true, but it's not going to be just our normal 4 to 5. That's going to be a 6 to 9 hours just on homework. But keep in mind, you need to be watching the lecture videos and making notes on those as you go. So expect to spend 10 to 15 hours per week on this course. And then the other thing I will read from here is resources. There are plenty of resources, which I'll show you. There's lecture videos, course notes, my office hours, and there are academic resources outside of class to help you out, which is what I will talk about next. So once again, I'm just gonna go through. I really recommend you read this, but you guys can read on your own, so you don't need to hear me read that for 15 minutes. One thing I want to make sure we talk about is, if you are a student that gets extended time accommodations, extended time on tests, things like that, you have to make sure you give me your note so I know to actually give that extended time to you. If you got extended time in high school, this is your first semester in college, then that doesn't automatically carry over, and you need to make sure you have an appointment so you can get a note from the SAS office to make sure you do actually get that accommodation. If you're not sure about that, once again, you can ask me, but all their contact information is here. Academic resources outside of class. So here's a link to the Learning Commons. This is where students go for tutoring, or if you're on campus, there's also tons of computers there, so you don't have to use your own. QLess tutoring, this is basically how you can log into the tutoring beforehand. You don't have to wait, get there, get to the Learning Commons and just wait for your time. You can know when your turn is up. There's virtual Learning Commons tutoring through Smart Thinking, which is right here. Now, I recommend you, although these are available 24/7, I recommend you only use these when the Learning Commons is not open. There's a ton of links to the library. In terms of a math class, we don't really use the library, but this is something that's put in every single syllabus at TCC. So you can read about that if you'd like, but it's really just a quiet place in terms of using it for a math class. Class recording is not really important for us. Attendance policy. What's going to happen is you're going to have your attendance taken once a week. The way that is going to work, the way I am going to take attendance, is that whatever is due that week, I check and make sure that you've at least done something. If you haven't, then you should have reached out to me as to why you are not doing something that week, and I will still mark you as present. But if you have no contact with me and you haven't done anything that's due that week, you will be marked as absent. And, really there's no penalty to your grade. I don't take attendance for grading purposes. It's a school-wide policy. But the one thing you want to make sure of is that there are certain points in time in the semester where the school is going to look and see, is this person going to get their financial aid? Are they going to be able to keep their financial aid because they're attending class? So if you know you're going to be unable to attend or do anything for a week, then make sure you reach out to me so I can at least mark you as present. Course withdrawal, I forgot to change the date now. I'm just realizing it. It's on the pacing schedule above. If you wish to withdraw, you must do so by July 5th. My inconvenient timing, it's the day after a holiday, but just be aware of that. You have to do that by July 5th. It is your responsibility, but you can always ask me questions, or advice. That's really the main thing. Is if you're in a position where you think you might want to withdraw, just ask me my thoughts. I can look at your grades. I can basically outline what you would need to do to get to a passing grade, but you have until July 5th. Already kind of talked about makeup work in terms of you can always do homeworks and quizzes. And if you have a note with regards to tests, you can take care of that as well. And then the last thing I'll talk about is really in terms of cheating for an online class. How are you going to cheat? Well, really cheating only occurs on tests in the final exam. You should be the one doing all your homeworks and quizzes and practice tests and discussion boards, but no one is able to truly proctor you. But in terms of early in the morning, as you can see. But in terms of doing the tests and final exam, you will be proctored through Unlocked. And because of that, you really need to make sure you're abiding by the rules. You're not going off camera. You're not using notes. You don't have a book open or your phone, things like that. And there are rules set out when you log on to Unlocked to make sure that you understand what's happening, what's expected of you. Okay, so I know that took about 35 minutes going through the syllabus, but that is the main bulk. Really what I'm going to show you now, I kind of outlined everything being on Canvas already. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about a couple things that I mentioned. So we already looked at office hours, the introduction video, that's what this is. So in case you ever need it, it's here. And then the online calculator that I was talking about, which is free, is called Desmos. So I have a link to it here. So you can save this link on your computer and you can use it at your own free will. But I also have a video of quick video in here of how to use it. So you are allowed to use this for any assignment, including tests. You're allowed to go to this website during your test, but that's the only website you can go to outside of the actual test. Textbook links, like I mentioned before, it's an extra resource there. It's outlined according to what we're doing in the course in our sections, so it's not like it's jumbled. But what I've done is I really have everything below based on, I've designed the questions that feed into the final exam ultimately, and I go over those with a fine-tooth comb in our lecture videos. So really, just take the notes from the lecture videos, use this as a supplemental place. Here's a couple links in terms of using the graphing calculator, and one specific for when we get to that section, so I won't talk about it now. I have a calculator information. I talked about it a little bit here, but you can read this if you'd like. It's basically exactly what I said. Quizzes. So I have a how quizzes work. The one thing I probably skipped over in the syllabus is that your lowest quiz grade is automatically dropped. Now, all your quizzes except for the introduction or syllabus quiz, which is based off the syllabus in this, are math-based. So you don't really want to skip this one and have this one be the drop grade. It's also very important. It just touches on important things. But if I go ahead and click on this assignment you can open up in the same tab, doesn't matter. So you'll notice that this says due blah, blah, blah. Well, you can redeem a late pass, but this isn't due for a while, so why would I use a late pass? Go ahead and start. And then it's just going to be a quiz asking you problems from these sections in the homework. One thing I wanted to do is just show you real quickly what happens. So you get 4 attempts on a quiz. Once you've done those 4 attempts, you'll no longer be able to type anything in. It will tell you the answer, but you won't have an option to do anything else. So I just got 0 out of 4 points on that problem. All right, but what if I get it right? Well, then of course, you get the points. You don't have to keep going. You're not even going to be able to keep guessing, just as you would expect. This right here is a countdown for how many tries you have left on the problem. And this is the recorded score. So if you get partial credit on your second attempt, you can still improve your grade and get full credit. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that, but that's how quizzes work. Comparing this to a homework assignment, so I'm going to go ahead and skip practice tests. Remember, they're just like the homeworks, and this is where you will take your tests. So I'm going to skip those as well. I'm going to go ahead and open up a homework assignment. So from module 1A down below are all homework assignments and the lecture videos, and notes that you would be accessing. And I want to just show you quickly the difference. What happens is you'll notice that we have this countdown here. So I have 3 tries on this question, but I also have this additional arrow that says I can actually get a similar question 99 times. So if I go ahead and guess that that's my answer, oh, I got 1.5 out of 4 points. Well, I still have 2 more tries on this. So I'm just going to keep clicking stuff. Well, I used all my 3 tries. I got 2 out of 4. Maybe I'm happy with that. But if I'm not, I can get a similar question and my 3 tries refreshes, and I have 98 more attempts at it, but hopefully no one uses all 100. That would take a very long time anyway. And you can keep doing the problems until you get them right. So that's how homework assignments work. That's exactly how the practice tests work as well. The only exception now is if I go back to the practice test and click on one of these, what's going to happen is I don't have a place that says use or redeem a late pass because I'm not allowed to use them. So just keep that in mind. One other thing that's pretty typical, if it's the first time you're logging into Lumen, is that it didn't ask for me, but it asks you just to agree to the terms and conditions when you first click on an assignment. You don't have to pay for anything to get access. You just have to scroll down, agree, and move on. Not really sure why it didn't ask me for that, but that's just the way it did it for me this time. All right, so in terms of our assignments, there are really 2 different types, given that this is a co-requisite course. So all your co-requisite material comes preloaded. The assignments come preloaded with notes and occasionally videos. And these notes and these videos are not made by me and the co-requisite material. It is what's sponsored by the college. So I will scroll down past those. You can take a look. Hey, here's a textbook link to how to do these problems. Here's some videos on how to do similar problems that are going to be in the assignment. Now, when you are working on actual MAC1105 assignments, so stuff that does not end with A, every section is going to be structured like this. You're going to have a lecture video link. You're going to have a blank notes link. You're going to have a filled out notes link, and you're going to have the homework link. And so the way I recommend doing this, and this is part of what's written in the syllabus that I told you to read on your own, is you can always open the video, start watching it. It's pretty tiny, and then take notes alongside. Now you can take notes on your own, Or you can look at the blank notes, which are exactly the notes that I go through, and make your own notes and comments on them. The reason why I put filled out notes on here, I don't recommend looking at filled out notes at the beginning, especially if you're not comfortable with math, because some of this can be a little overwhelming. But the thing is, this is a good resource to go back and check. Maybe you lost your notes somehow, or whatever happened, you're running short on time, you can't find your notes, you forgot how to do a problem, it's done in the lecture video. Instead of having to watch the lecture video, you can just go back to the problem here. The one caveat is, these problems I go through very slowly in the lecture video. Make sure, I'm annotating at every step of the way. But at the end of the day, if I'm looking at this for the first time, even to me, someone that did this problem, this can get overwhelming. So don't use them as your first resource. Now, the way the homeworks are set up is the problems are set up very similar to the order you see them in the videos. So I'll go back to the lecture notes. You can see the very first problem I do is solving something like this. The one thing I'll point out is there's no exponents here. So if I go to the homework, it's very similarly set up. We have to solve for something without exponents. The second one's just like that. And so my recommendation is watch the video in order, have the homework open as well. And when you come across a problem that's similar, watch the video, then try to do the problem. It will save you time. Once I get to this question 3, there's an exponent here. I'm not going to be able to use what I learned from this problem to do it. So I'm going to need to go to the next problem, and it should be very similarly set up. Now, if you're finding that the video I provide aren't helping, or you need a different perspective, there's also a video link inside the homework assignments you can click on. These are once again provided by Lumen. Forgot that you have to actually click on it and not open it in a new tab, and it opens up as a pop-up, and it'll just be the video that they have preloaded in there. I guess this one's taken a while. And then another option, maybe you've watched my video, you've watched this video, you've gone to outside resources, you can't figure out how to do this problem. You can message your instructor, which is me. It will tell me the problem that you're working on, and you just need to write a comment. I get stuck doing this problem at this part, and then, wherever you get stuck at. So I know where you're at, and I'm not trying to just redo the whole problem, because then I'm going to just say, well, that's going to be in the video. I don't know where you're stuck at. So just give me some direction there. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. That's how every single college algebra not co-requisite section is set up. And you can go ahead and look for yourself if you want. And that's all that's down here. There is some extra final exam material here in case you'd like to look at that. But by the time you get to the final exam, you're going to be focused on the practice final. That's just going to be extra stuff if you need it. So we talked about the syllabus, of course, the grades tab. I'm sure you're all familiar with the grades tab, unless this is your first semester in college and you didn't use this kind of stuff in high school. To be honest, I'm not really sure anymore at this point what goes on in high schools. So I'm not sure if you would be familiar with Canvas, but probably the most important feature, you can see your breakdown, you can see your grades, how it's all calculated, but it's the what if feature. So if you come down to the end of the semester, everything's graded, but the final, you need to know, what do I need to get on the final to get a certain grade? Well, then you can just type a what if grade in. Let's say I got a 65 on the final, then mine's all messed up because of the way it's all calculated. I basically have a 0% on quizzes and homeworks. So I would get a 29% based on where I stand. What if I got an 85? Then I would be there. And then you can always hit that to go back to your real grade and see where you're actually at. Discussions. So you can access the discussions through the home tab, but they're also on here. And then they're just ordered in terms of the week. So week 2 discussion, they're all structured the same. what we did this week. You make an initial post by Saturday, and then you'll respond to 2 of your peers by the Sunday. So in terms of what it looks like on our calendar, it's going to look like the discussion boards are due on Sunday, because that's when this is due. But you really need to make sure you're doing the initial post by Saturday, because if everyone does it on Sunday, then there's not going to be anyone to respond to until Sunday, and that's pretty frantic. Smart Thinking, Study Edge, once again, outside help. Study Edge, it usually doesn't load at the beginning of the semester anyway. They have to reset it for every semester in the class, so it probably won't load right now anyway. But it's just a place to go for extra videos and extra help outside of hours that are typical, so like weekends and evenings. Trying to rack my brain. Actually, the discussion boards, I'll make sure the discussion boards are on here. I just realized they're not on here anymore for some reason. So I'll make sure they will be put on there. The last link here, attendance. I don't think it's going to even, it might work, it might not work when I show you this because the semester hasn't started. Yeah, so the semester hasn't started, which means it's not going to show me anything. I don't think as a student you need to even look at this. It's just for me. I have to have it available so you can see, so I can actually use it. But really, that's it. So hopefully, watching this video will help you out. And if you have any questions after, of course, feel free to ask. It's something I didn't touch on. But really, that's going to be what's available for you, what's in the course, what's on our Canvas site. So make sure, of course, if you're watching this right now, you watched it, but make sure you go through and read the extra parts of the syllabus that I mentioned, especially if you're not strong in math, or you feel not confident in math. It might be because you take the wrong approach. You don't really want to just watch an hour-long lecture and then try to do a homework assignment. You want to work on it as you go. It's very important. So that's really what I recommend doing, is reading that Tips for Success. But thank you and good luck through the semester.